Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 313. We're doing our Week 19 NFL picks against the spread. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you, and how's your Week 18?
I'm doing great today. Week 18 was it was pretty good for me. I went 4-2. I feel like I had the right side in all but one game. I was completely off on Steelers Browns. The Steelers just did not show up for that game at all, so they got punched in the mouth out of the gate and could never make it up. The only other loss I had was Colts Bills, and that one, it really looked like the Bills should have won that by double digits in the end, but they couldn't really get anything going. I mean, you could also make the case that the Colts left some points on the field, so that was just a weird game. But the middle of the everything that wasn't on the end of that slate, I did pretty well in. So I was happy about that. And then Alabama came through in the national championship, so I was also very happy about that. Roll Tide. So pretty good week for me. But how about you?
It was pretty rough. I had a great regular season, great finish in the Super Contest, and then the playoffs happened, and it was pretty bad last weekend. It was one of the weirdest weekends I've ever seen in the NFL playoffs. Like to start, as you said, the Bills probably should have covered as a backdoor cover, whatever, it happens. In the second game, Jared Goff comes in with a broken thumb and beats Russell Wilson. It's like, how does Russell Wilson lose to a quarterback with a broken thumb? I know that the offensive line, which is fully healthy, struggled against the Rams defensive line, but still, like a broken thumb quarterback shouldn't be able to beat Russell Wilson in the playoffs. You wouldn't think. And then the Buccaneers Redskins kind of went like as I thought it would. Like same thing, Saints Bears. But the other two games on Sunday, Titans came out to a 10-0 lead. I thought we had a great number, plus 3.5 with them at home, and then they just did nothing afterward, which is so frustrating. And then you said, as you said, like the Steelers. I don't know if you felt this way, but as soon as the first play happened, I knew the Steelers are not going to win because the ball sailed over Roethlisberger's head on the bad snap, and Roethlisberger and James Conner just stood there staring at the ball. And then the Browns guys like all pounced on it. And I was like, oh my God, like the Browns are going to try so much harder than the Steelers in this game. It looks so obvious that the Steelers just thought they can roll in and just beat the Browns because they clobbered them earlier this year. And the Browns are missing the head coach. They're missing so many starters. Just look like the Steelers are so overconfident. They probably didn't even prepare for this game. That was my sentiment about that game. Like, did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I didn't think they were cooked after the first snap. I thought they were in trouble after that play, but I was like, oh, they can bounce back. But then they looked completely unfocused after that. And by the time they were able to get their head in the game, they were way too far down. And Mike Tomlin had one of the worst coaching moves of all time with his team down, I think, 12 points. I believe it was 12, maybe 11. I can't remember exactly. He was close to midfield, I think, and he decided to punt to the Browns. And it was like, you're down 2 scores. You have all the momentum. If you kick this and they go down and score, it's basically game over for you. And yet he still decided to do it. And lo and behold, Nick Chubb got a touchdown, and that was all she wrote for the Steelers. So even when they had a chance to come back and potentially win, they were just screwing themselves out of having any chance in this game.
The Titans did the same thing. Remember, it was like at midfield. It was a 4-point game or something like that, and then Mike Vrabel decided to punt, and then the Ravens went down and kicked the field goal to make it 7 points. So I don't understand what these coaches are thinking sometimes. It was pretty bad. But I will say though that as bad as last weekend was, at least we got to see Mitchell Trubisky win MVP. It was the highlight of the year. And I have to say, I'm so disappointed that Lex Lumpkin didn't get to interview Mitch Trubisky and hand him the NFL's version of a participation trophy. It would have been amazing. I'm so sad we didn't see that, but I'm happy I can refer to him as the MVP winner from now until eternity.
Yeah, that whole game experience on Nickelodeon was great, but I loved how like Nate Burleson and Noah Eagle in the booth were like, oh yeah, it looks like Mitch Trubisky, despite they were basically trying to avoid saying like the Bears played awful. What's happening? They're like, I guess they like his effort out there. They did a really good job that broadcast. Thought it was super fun. So props to them for doing that. And Nickelodeon MVP Mitch Trubisky. That's gonna live on forever.
That's the highlight of his career, as sad as it is. It really is. It was a cool broadcast. I used to watch Nickelodeon obviously all the time when I was a kid. But Burleson needed to cool down with the analogies. And like it was an analogy like every 2 seconds. It's like, kids, this is what this is like. It's like, okay, all right, calm down. Like I get like the first 20, but like, all right, let's chill out with the analogies after that. But I liked it overall. Can't wait for the next Nickelodeon broadcast, probably next year in the playoffs. But I don't think they're going to hand out an MVP trophy anymore. So I think Trubisky's going to be the sole winner. We had a couple questions. Yeah, it was a boring game, by the way. Andrew was saying it would have been a very boring game, like if it was just Nance and Romo on the other telecast. I didn't even watch the other telecast. Thoughts on Costanzo retiring is kind of a surprise, right? I mean, he has been, he's been injured. So I guess you could probably see this coming, but the Colts have to be feeling pretty bad to lose him.
Yeah, I think he considered retiring last offseason, so I wasn't overly surprised he decided to retire this year. That's going to leave a hole on that offensive line for the Colts, and that's going to be a big deal if Phillip Rivers decides to come back because he's not mobile, and you want someone good on his blind side to protect him. So they're going to have to invest a resource in there or consider kicking Quentin Nelson out to left tackle, which I wouldn't do because he's like an elite guard, but I've seen some people suggest that, so I think it would be possible. I think that's more of an emergency scenario thing that they would do, though. So I think that they'll need a left tackle. Costanzo had a great career. I mean, he was just rock solid. I know he had injury issues later in his career, but he was huge for that Colts offensive line because they were bad for a long time, but he was always just a stalwart at that position. So props to him for a good career and representing the Boston College Eagles well.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good tackles in this draft, so they can maybe replace him. It's going to be tough though because he was such a great player, and it's gonna it will hurt though. Like unless they could find someone great right away. And the Colts calling card was their offensive line, and that's kind of why I didn't like them against the Bills, but they did salvage the cover. So there's that. Thoughts on Doug Peterson being fired? This is kind of a surprise. Because it didn't happen right away. I thought that if he was going to get fired, it would have been right away. But apparently, the owner wanted Peterson to assemble a good coaching staff because that's how they won in 2017. And then Peterson apparently had some bad suggestions. I would love to know what they were. Like, what if he thought like Rich Kotite and like Art Shell were his suggestions? Like I thought I don't know what they were, but yeah, I think it was a good move. It wasn't a no brainer like the other ones, but I thought it was the right move because Peterson, it just seemed like he didn't have his team prepared in most weeks. And you look at some of the players who've left the Eagles, they've done a lot better. Like Ronald Darby played a lot better in Washington this year. Nelson Aguilar played a lot better with the Raiders this year. Rasul Douglas played better this year leaving. And so when that happens, you can't like a coach too much. So I thought it was a good move.
Yeah, I was okay with it. I was kind of on the fence about it. Like my big thing is I just don't know how attractive that job is going to be. Just because they're in salary cap hell right now, and I know Howie Roseman can navigate that very well, but the quarterback situation there isn't great because Jalen Hurts had a couple good games, but he also wasn't like clear cut, like, oh, this guy's a franchise quarterback. And then Carson Wentz, we obviously saw what happened last year, so they have work to do in the quarterback room. They're going to have a lot of roster turnover, which could be a good thing for this team, but they need to find a coach that's willing to deal with that early on. And someone that, the Eagles fans and organization isn't going to get frustrated with immediately if they're not good right off the bat. So I think they're going to enter a tough little rebuild here. I don't think it's going to be that long of one, but it's going to be tough for them to kind of retool. So I think this is going to be a building year. So maybe you could have kept Peterson around as a lame duck type deal, but I get where he may have lost the locker room late this season. So I don't hate it, but I don't think it was the best possible move.
And that's why I hated the Hurts pick so much. Like, not just because of Hurts. It was because of, like, they have so much money dedicated to Wentz that they needed to build around him rather than spend a high resource on a quarterback. And it was just, I thought it was such a bad decision on their part. And then also in the first round, obviously passing on Justin Jefferson in favor of Jalen Reagor, which is like, that's not hindsight. Like everyone thought that Jefferson was a better prospect at the time. So yeah, it was the Eagles are trending downward. You're right. It's going to be a rebuilding year, probably a couple rebuilding years because of their salary cap situation. One more question before we get to our picks. Chances on Deshaun Watson leaving. There's some turmoil there. He's frustrated that they're not taking steps for social justice. I think that's what the report was. And he was not happy with the GM hire. But I think this is I think things will cool down. Like I don't think there's a guarantee that he's going to leave or anything. I think there's a slight chance, but I think he's probably going to stay. It is tough to move him too. Like not that people don't want him. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's paid a lot of money, so it's tough to move a player like that because of financial details. But I think there's more of a chance he stays than leaves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the big thing was, and the whole reason he's frustrated is the ownership basically told him, like, yeah, we'll consult you on stuff. Like that doesn't necessarily mean they're gonna follow what he says, but they said they'd consult with him, and then they didn't even interview any of the candidates he recommended for GM. And they weren't going to interview Eric Bieniemy for coach either. Though they decided to do that today, which seems to be an olive branch toward Watson. But yeah, so I think there's definitely some turmoil there, but it's nothing that they won't be able to work out, I would imagine. But you know, the possibility of him moving exists, but I agree with you. I think he's more likely to stay.
Yeah, I think so. Here's real quick. When are we releasing our mock draft? Tomorrow morning, Wednesday. There's going to be a new player at number 3 overall. You can probably guess who it is based on what happened in last night's game. So before we begin, please hit subscribe or the like button. That would mean a lot. The notification bell too, or share this with someone who likes football who may not know about our channel, because we're sort of new, so people may not know about it. So all right, so we're going to get to our 4 picks today. And we're also going to discuss possible spreads for the week, 20 lines, the conference championships. So there are 8 possibilities. So we're going to kind of guess the spreads, but we're going to get to the games first. So the first game is Saturday at 4:35, Rams at Packers. This line opened up Packers -7. It's still -7 in some sports books, but it's 6.5 at bookmaker. So looks like there is some sharp money coming in on the Rams. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I also like the Rams a little bit. I just think this spread's a bit too high. I know the Rams are dealing with some injuries, specifically to Jared Goff, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald. But biggest concern of those is going to be Goff because he's playing through a broken thumb. But he's going to have another week to heal up, so hopefully his hand will be in a little bit better shape. If it's not, John Walford may get the start again, provided that he's healthy. He's dealing with the stinger as well. But I think no matter who they play at quarterback, this game, similar to their last game, will boil down to the defense. And I think the Packers are going to be in tough shape blocking Donald and Leonard Floyd and their great front -2 starting offensive linemen because Lane Taylor's been out all year, and David Bakhtiari, we're going to see them without him for the first time after he tore his ACL in practice. So I think that's going to be a pretty big deal. He's the best left tackle in football. And I think even with an extra week to prepare for this, it's going to be difficult for them to contain that Rams pass rush that was so good against the Seahawks. And then on the offensive side of the ball for the Rams, I think Cam Akers, he's going to be the key to this one. The Packers have not been good against the run this year. They did claim Snacks Harrison off waivers from Seattle. So if he's ready to go and contribute, maybe he could help slow down Akers. But I just kind of think that they're going to do what they did against the Seahawks, run the ball a lot, play really good defense, limit Rodgers, and keep this thing close. Now, I think Green Bay will still emerge with a victory here. But if we're getting 7 points here, I like the Rams a lot because I think this could easily be a field goal game. Again, if something changes health related, I may change my tune on this one. But for now, I'm on the Rams for 2 units. And, if they're all confirmed healthy, I may bump this up to 3 or 4.
Okay, you so I mean you're a lot more confident in this game than I am. There's some conflicting things that I feel like are going to probably keep me away from betting this game. Well, you mentioned the thing against the Packers is that David Bakhtiari's out. Like that's huge because they're already missing Lane Taylor, so they're going to be missing two offensive linemen against Aaron Donald and the rest of the Rams front, which kind of sounds like is like how do they overcome that? But you know, Aaron Rodgers can. He did that against the Bears. The Bears have a great front, and week 17, he beat the Bears by 19. So it's not like he can't do that, but it's going to make it more difficult for them to cover because with this high line, the Rams are going to be more in play for backdoor cover. So that is kind of why I like the Rams. But there are two things going against the Rams that I really don't like. Is like one, you touched on it. Jared Goff has a broken thumb. John Wolford, who knows if he can play or not? He has a neck injury. If it comes out that Wolford is healthier and is a full participant in practice, I'll be more confident in the Rams. But if he's limited or missing practice, then I'm going to be concerned. The other issue is that the weather in this game is going to be pretty bad. It looks like I'm going to check it, but the last time I looked, it was going to be mid-20s and pretty windy as far as I saw. So I'm seeing 26 degrees, partly cloudy. Okay, the wind isn't that bad as I thought it would be, but the Rams are a dome team from a warm weather city. So playing in this harsh conditions could be tough. But then again, they could run the ball pretty well in the Packers. So, I think I'll just be contrarian to you because this is a toss up for me. I think I'm going to go with the Packers. But I really could see this game going either way. It's pretty close.
Yeah, the weather makes me a little concerned on the Rams, but I just think that the defense, the weather doesn't matter for your defense. Your defense is usually what carries you in bad weather games. So I just think that they're going to be better in this one. I think the big matchup to watch is going to be Jaylen Ramsey against Devonte Adams, because if Ramsey can take away Adams, it's going to be hard for Rodgers to, consistently find his guys quickly. Because he doesn't have a lot of weapons that get open right away. He usually can wait around in the pocket or move around and get them open. So Adams is going to have to come with his A game. And if not, Ramsey might be able to shut him down.
Yeah, so we have a question here, or I guess a comment about the Rams playing well outdoors recently. But I mean, this is just a tough situation. Like the last time the Rams played outdoors, or it's last week, obviously in Seattle, but it wasn't that cold. Before that, Tampa Bay, obviously no weather situations. And I'm looking at like late game conditions. So in 2019, they played at San Francisco, no weather concerns there. At Dallas, that's dome. And then 2018, they played at New Orleans Dome, at Arizona Dome, at Chicago in week 14 was their last cold weather game, and they lost 15-6. While they have played better outdoors, it's kind of be a different situation. It's going to be pretty cold, but I think you make a good point. Like it may not be a factor, but I think it's something that it's something to consider at least.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think the Packers will win. I just think it's going to be closer than people think because the Rams defense is just that good.
Yeah, I think you could be right. This is, I think, the toughest game for me to handicap right now. I guess we'll get to another game later because there's a big injury question mark. But right now, I think this is the one game I'm probably not going to bet. So I like the other three games more. So let's get to the next one. This is 8:15 on Saturday night. The Ravens at the Bills. It's line open at Bills -3. It's down to 2. It's actually down to 1.5 with sharp money coming in on Baltimore. But then this line rose, and I think that it might be an indication that the sharps are split on this game. So some might like Buffalo as well. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I was pretty torn on this one, but the big thing that I keep coming back to is I'm worried about whether or not the Bills are going to be able to stop the run against Baltimore. Because if you look at what they did against the Colts had 163 total rushing yards, and that was without having a mobile quarterback. So that worries me about the Bills' defense. I know that the Ravens aren't as good through the air, but I'm not sure they're going to have to be on that side of the ball this time around to make some noise here. And then I just think that the Ravens are going to play a ball dominant clock control type game in this one. If they can move the ball on the Bills and run, and they can hang on to the ball and somehow either build a lead and maintain it or just at least keep pace with the Bills, I think they'll be in it to the very end. And then on the other side of the ball, the Bills can't run right now, and they just lost Zach Moss. And it's going to be really hard for them to run on this Baltimore defense. So that means Josh Allen's going to have to carry them basically through this game on offense. And he's fully capable of doing that. But we saw him have like moments of struggle against the Colts defense last week, and that's a strong defensive unit. I think the Ravens are similar. So I could see another close game. When this line was at 3, I definitely liked the Ravens because, I thought it might be a field goal game and you get the push at least, even if the Bills win on 3 points as an underdog. But I think I'm going to stick with the Ravens. I don't know if I'm going to bet this one right now. I just think they're going to be able to sell out and try to do everything they can to stop Allen on defense. And I think their running game should give them a chance to keep pace with the Bills. So I like the Ravens. I'm not sure I'm going to bet this one with the line dropping below 3. So we'll see what ends up happening here.
So I like the Bills a little bit. I think this line is off. I think this line should be Bills -4.5. As I think people might be surprised by that. But I'm not a big fan of the Ravens because ever since they lost Ronnie Stanley, they haven't really beaten a good team. Like they beaten the Browns and the Titans, and I'm not sure they count as like good teams. Like I think they're above average. Like the Browns have a negative point differential, and the Titans they have I consider them overrated as well throughout the year. So I'm not a big fan of them. And I think the Bills are just better. And the last time the Ravens played a team that's like a caliber of the Bills was I think like week 8 when the Steelers were healthy and the Steelers beat them. And then before that in week 3 when the Chiefs like clobbered them on Monday Night Football. So I think the Bills are the better team, and the Bills played Lamar Jackson pretty well last year. When I look at his stats, so Lamar Jackson in that game, he went 16 of 25. And he threw 3 touchdowns, but one was it was a busted play. It was a 61-yard pass to Hayden Hurst. That was a touchdown. So he didn't really do much otherwise. And he was held to 40 rushing yards. So it's not like he ran all over Buffalo. So I think Buffalo has they obviously coached very well with Sean McDermott. They have really good personnel. Like I don't quite know like why they're struggling against the run so much. I feel like they should be better at it. And I think they should be able to step up and play well against Lamar Jackson. Like we just saw Tennessee hold Lamar Jackson to 20 points, and Buffalo has much better defensive personnel than Tennessee. So I like the Bills here. I think we're getting a great number at -2. Like I said, I think it should be -4.5. So getting 3 and 4 and 3 obviously being the most important. I just like Buffalo a lot.
Yeah, like I said, I'm probably not betting on the Ravens at this number. When it was 3, I liked them more, but I definitely see your argument for the Bills. I just think the Ravens offense is built in ways that can exploit the Bills defense. Just the Bills aren't good against the tight ends, and they're not good against the run. And that's what Baltimore has. They have Mark Andrews, and then they have really good running games. So I think they can keep it close. But, if you're on the fence about this game, I would choose siding with you over siding with me in this one, because I could kind of see this one going either way. And I thought Baltimore was overrated coming into the playoffs too. I do agree with you on this. It's more of the matchup here. But like you pointed out, last year the Bills had a plan in place to take down the Ravens. So this one's the one that I'm least confident in on this slate, I think.
Yeah, and if you look at last year's matchup, Josh Allen went 17 of 39 for 146 and a touchdown. So he was pretty bad in that game, but now he's Stephon Diggs, and he's gotten a lot better this year. So I think that, with so many weapons at his disposal, it's going to be hard for Baltimore to contain him. Like, it's not like Tennessee where Tannehill just throws to A.J. Brown and that's it because Corey Davis gets hurt. Like, he has we had a question about Cole Beasley. So, yeah, Cole Beasley's available. John Brown, obviously Stephon Diggs. Gabriel Davis is playing well. And then Dawson Knox plus Singletary out of the backfield. As good as Baltimore's defense is, there's just so many weapons to defend. And I don't know if you can slow down. Maybe you can slow them down, but you can't stop the Buffalo offense. So I think the Bills should be able to score enough to get the win. Yeah,
I think you could be right.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, I guess. Sorry. So the going to Sunday, the 3:05 game on Sunday afternoon, Browns at the Chiefs. This line opened up Chiefs -10. It's still 10. So this is the game where there's a big injury question mark. We don't know if Mitchell Schwartz is going to play. So with that in mind, who do you like in this game?
So this is another one that I'm kind of torn on because there's two different things happening here. It's Andy Reid with extra time and an elite quarterback, obviously, playing against a team that has been spotty, especially over the middle this year. But you're also looking at Patrick Mahomes potentially being down, Mitchell Schwartz again, and the fact that the Chiefs haven't beaten any team by double digits since the Jets back in week 8, I believe it was. And we've been saying that for a while now, and every time they've been double-digit favorites, like they were against the Falcons, we were like, all right, well, we better go with the Falcons here because it makes sense. And based on what I'm reading or what I've seen so far, it sounds like Mitchell Schwartz might be out for the rest of the season. I'm not entirely sold on that. I think it's going to be a week-to-week. We're going to have to wait and see if he comes back thing. But if Mitchell Schwartz doesn't play, I kind of think I like the Browns to cover this one and just keep it close. Again, I know that goes against Andy Reid having the extra time to prepare and the fact that the Browns haven't practiced at all in recent weeks. But I think if Mitchell Schwartz does play, I'm going to be on the Chiefs here because I think the Browns may come up a little bit flat because they just had a massive emotional drubbing of one of their arch rivals. So I think that would have a pretty big impact on their ability to get ready for this game. They haven't been able to practice, like I said, because of COVID. And I think that would make me lean on the Chiefs because I think the Chiefs will be, they've had an extra week to focus on this game and just get ready for whoever they're going to play. And I think the Browns secondary is going to have a really tough time containing the Chiefs. So my end result here, I think I'm going to say that Mitchell Schwartz is probably not going to play in this game. So I'm going to be on the Browns. That's my roundabout way of saying it. But if he ends up playing, I'm going to switch to the Chiefs. But yeah, I think the Browns could get a backdoor cover though. They may trail Kansas City by 2 touchdowns the whole game, and then Baker drives for a backdoor one here. But yeah, that's what I think if Mitchell Schwartz is out.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that the Chiefs, we talked about how, and you mentioned it, that they haven't beaten teams by double digits. So to run it through, ever since when Mitchell Schwartz went down, so they beat the Jets, obviously, as you said, but then they beat the Panthers by 2, they beat the Raiders by 4, they beat the Buccaneers by 3, they beat the Broncos by 6, they beat the Dolphins by 6, they beat the Saints by 3, and they beat the Falcons by 3, and then they obviously sat out week 17. So that's how they've beaten their opponents ever since they lost Mitchell Schwartz. So having him around is going to be so important against the Browns defensive line. Obviously, Myles Garrett and all those guys. If Schwartz isn't around, Mahomes is going to be running for his life, and he's still going to win this game. I'm pretty sure, but it's going to be tough for him to cover a 10-point spread, given that he won't have time in the pocket. And and as you said, if the Chiefs aren't scoring that much, that's going to open up the back door for the Browns. Cleveland has a great offensive line, and we're going to get Joel Bitonio back. Wyatt Teller's healthy now. So they're going to be able to block Chris Jones and Frank Clark and all those guys. And so they're going to be able to run the ball pretty well. And Baker Mayfield is going to have time to throw. I like the matchup for Austin Hooper over the middle. So the Browns should be able to score enough if Schwartz is out. Now, if Schwartz is in, I agree. I think the Chiefs are going to score a ton against the Browns. Their secondary linebacking core, I feel like those are good matchups, especially for Travis Kelce. I feel like he's going to have a monster game. So yeah, kind of like you said, it's going to depend on Schwartz. If he's in, I like the Chiefs. If he's out, I like the Browns.
Yeah, and we have a question about why our pick depends so much on Mitchell Schwartz playing. Walt, you just outlined a great case for this, but there are 2 names as to why this matters. Myles Garrett versus Mike Remmers. You do not want that to happen. Mike Remmers is a fine swing tackle. There's nothing wrong with having him as a backup, but he started the latter half of the season, and as you've said, they've not been able to win by double-digit points with him in the starting lineup or him serving as the right tackle. So I think Myles Garrett could absolutely tee off on Patrick Mahomes. And, the whole argument is, you can't stop the Chiefs. You can slow them down. And, slowing down the Chiefs might be holding them to 31 points or maybe 28 points. But the Browns have the type of offense to keep up with that. So if you have that opportunity to slow them down via a pass rusher like Myles Garrett playing against Mike Remmers, then you have to like the 10-point spread. So, yeah, I think you and I are both exactly on the same page here. So, everyone watching this, watch the injury report. Depending on what happens with Mitchell Schwartz, don't lock in your pick till we know.
Yeah, that's for sure. At this line where 5.5 or 6, I think that it wouldn't depend as much on Schwartz's injury because I think the Chiefs would have a better chance of getting 6 and 7, winning by 6 and 7, which are key numbers. But 10 is such a big number that I think you need a fully healthy or mostly healthy team to cover a spread like this against a decent opponent. All right, let's get to the final game, and this is Sunday at 6:40. The Buccaneers at the Saints. This line opened up Saints -4. It's down to 3. There's a lot of public money coming in on Tampa Bay, which is not a surprise. With Tom Brady being an underdog, it looks just so inviting. So, are you taking Brady here, or are you going with the Saints?
For the first time in a Saints-Bucks game this year, I'm going with the Saints. And the reasoning for it is simple. Bruce Arians just has not been able to figure out the Saints so far in his 2 years with the Bucks. They're 0-4 outright in these games. So with the 3-point spread, it's going to be really hard if they lose for them to cover. I mean, it's possible, obviously, but I think that it's going to be difficult. And we kind of saw against Washington, the Buccaneers defense is still having issues in the secondary. Drew Brees, I know he wasn't great last week against Chicago, but he kind of started putting everything together towards the end of the week. They have more weapons back with Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas healthy. They're pretty much entirely healthy. You have Taysom Hill around who can give the Buccaneers some fits with mobility. They struggled to contain Taylor Heineke's rushing ability last week, so mixing in Taysom Hill on the offensive side might give them some issues there. And I just think I think the Saints just have a clear matchup edge. If you look back to the previous 2 games, Tom Brady had a lot of trouble figuring out their defense, and their defense has enough weapons in the secondary to match up with their receivers. Now, I know Antonio Brown was only a week into his Bucs tenure the last time these 2 teams played, so his presence will make a difference. But I just based on how they played against the Saints those other 2 times, I don't like their chances of winning this one outright. I could see a cover here, but I think it's more likely that the Saints will end up ending Tom Brady's first postseason run in Tampa Bay here. I'm also hedging a little bit because I have Super Bowl money on the Bucs. So if I take the Saints here and the Bucs win or cover, I won't be all that mad. But I'm going to be on the Saints here for probably 1 or 2 units. And just my logic is teams don't often face off 3 times in 1 year, but if one team had the advantage, like a big advantage in the first 2, it's hard for me to imagine that the Bucs have made so many significant differences since then. Now, I know they've had some, but this spread just seems a little bit too low based on what we've seen in the past.
I agree. I think this line's too low. I made this line Saints -3.5, and the computer says Saints -5 is correct. So it looks low, and I'm glad you brought up the third meeting because I've already heard it twice. There's one. Tony Dungy said it once. I forget who said it again. But the old adage is it's difficult to beat a team 3 times in a season. It's like not true. Since 2002. A team that has swept a team and played them in the playoffs is 5-2 against them. So it is small sample size, obviously, but the teams can do it. But then again, 3-4 against the spread. So maybe they don't win by as many points as people think. But with this line being 3, the spread won't be a factor unless the Saints win by 3, and it's a push. So I think that it's safe to say that the Saints, I feel like they're going to win a third time. So I agree with you on this pick. The big thing is that Tom Brady versus that defensive line. When Tom Brady's pressured without teams needing the blitz, he tends to struggle. So I think Tom Brady's going to maybe not struggle, but I don't think he's going to have his best game. And then you have Tampa's secondary versus Drew Brees, who's playing a lot better since he returned against the Chiefs. Is Michael Thomas in his second game back, Alvin Kamara in his second game back, Deontay Harris has come out of nowhere to play well, Emmanuel Sanders. Like, there are a lot of weapons here for the Buccaneers to defend, and they have such trouble against the pass. If they were playing a team that was more run focused, I think they'd win this game. But given how the Saints operate, I just feel like it's just a bad matchup for them, and the number is low. So I like the Saints.
Yeah, and I think you hit on the Bucks pass defense being their weakness at this point. That was their weakness of the defense all year. They held up pretty well in this regard early in the season, but then because they have young players, as the season went along, more coaches got more film on them in big roles and found ways to beat them. Sean Payton is one that has done it multiple times. So I imagine he'll have some plan cooked up for this one. And we saw against the against Washington last week. Brady, he was not under pressure for a good chunk of that game, and he played very well. But at times, Daron Payne specifically got interior pressure on him in the red zone. And a lot of those drives where he was pressured by Payne and got sacked or even just hit ended in a field goal. That's why Washington was within striking distance. So I think if New Orleans and Cameron Jordan and those guys can get pressure up front, especially in the red zone, they'll be able to limit the amount of points that Tampa gets and then air it out on the other side of the ball, and they should be okay.
Yeah, we have this question: could the Saints overlook the Bucks, having beaten them twice already? If they were a larger favorite against a quarterback not named Tom Brady, I think yes, that is possible. But given that they're playing Tom Brady, I don't think so.
Yeah, and also, like, if they win this, they get to go to the NFC Championship. So I can't imagine them being like, "Oh yeah, we're already cruising into the NFC Championship." That doesn't tend to happen. Like, I know you can look back to last year and the Ravens. They lost to the Titans, but that was less about them overlooking the Titans and more about them playing a bad game. So I think even if the Saints lose this game or don't cover, I don't think it's going to be about them overlooking the Bucks. I think it's going to be more about them just playing a bad game.
Yeah, we had a question from Andrew. Are the Buccaneers overrated like the Ravens? Have they beaten anyone besides the Packers? So let's go through their wins, right? So in week 1, they lost to the Saints, then they beat the Panthers, they beat the Broncos without Drew Lock. They beat the Chargers in a close game. They lost to the Bears when they didn't have any receivers. They beat the Packers, which Andrew mentioned. They beat the Raiders in a blowout. They beat the Giants in a close game. They lost to the Saints again. They beat the Panthers. They lost to the Rams on Monday night. They lost to the Chiefs in a 3-point game, but it was a larger margin than that, really. Then they beat the Vikings at home. They beat the Falcons. They beat the Lions, and then they beat the Falcons again. So not too many convincing wins there, right? But given that they have Tom Brady, all those receivers, a good offensive line, not great, but a good offensive line, and a stout defensive line. Like I think they're a really good team, even though they haven't really beaten anyone except for the Packers.
Yeah, I think if you look at them and their perception publicly, you could maybe argue that they're overrated. Like I could absolutely see that based on the fact that they haven't beaten many teams with a winning record. But I think they have the personnel needed to be an elite team. I think they're just still in the gelling phase that we so often see, more so in the NBA when a super team is built. It takes like a year and then they're really, really good. I think this team is, starting to reach that phase of like, all right, the offense is starting to click now. The defense is trying to fully come together, especially in the secondary. So I wouldn't call them overrated per se, but I could see the argument for it.
Yeah, maybe slightly overrated because the public is betting them this week, and they have the bad pass defense. Like that's such a liability. If you look at the Saints, like the Saints don't have a liability like that. And I don't think the Packers do either before the Bakhtiari injury. So if you look at the peers in the conference with them, like they're definitely a tier below those two teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay. And last question, what's your best over-under game this week? I hate totals, so take this with a grain of salt, but I like I would say I like the Rams-Packers under because the Packers are missing 2 offensive linemen and the Rams have an injured quarterback, so I feel like that's going to go under. Do you have any take on this?
I like that one as well. I will also say that I like the over in Chiefs-Browns. I think that game could get kind of out of control. Offensive shootout, because when Cleveland has been competitive, they score a lot of points. Like they just scored 48 against the Steelers, and the Chiefs could easily put up similar totals. And also, if you ever want to do an over/under, just always bet the Alabama over. That worked so well this year, and I'm kind of bummed I didn't do it last night. But you live and learn.
Yeah, that's true. So we have some possibilities here for the lines next week. So there are 8 possibilities, 4 in each conference. We were asked to do this last week, but there were so many possibilities that we just didn't want to do it. So let's go with the NFC first. I think the NFC is the first game next week. The Rams at the Buccaneers. So if the Rams pull the upset, both teams pull the upset, and the Rams are playing at the Buccaneers. This is a rematch of the Monday night game. What do you think this line is?
I want to say it would be like Buccaneers -1.5 or -2, because I think you'd be looking again at like the Rams. They have this great pass rush, which is something that Brady has struggled with against in his career, and the Rams beat them earlier in the season. So you'd be banking kind of on, all right, the Rams will give the Bucs some trouble, but the Bucs might have a chance to win, or should have a chance to win this, but it's probably going to be close. That would be my initial instinct on this one.
Yeah, I could see that. I would go with Buccaneers. I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go like Buccaneers -3.5 because the line and the Monday night game was 4, and I think it will be less. Especially, it depends on how impressive that Rams Packers win is. Like if the Rams win an ugly game, I think it'll be closer to 4. But if the Rams win like pretty easily, like Rodgers just can't do anything behind that offensive line, then I think you might be right. So it really depends on how the game goes. But right now, I think it'd be above 3 because I think people will want to bet on Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think you would definitely be right about them wanting to bet on Tom Brady, especially like there's nothing sexy about betting a team like with a struggling quarterback because they have a great defense. Like it works frequently, as we've seen with the Rams this year, but the public might not want to do that. So I could see it going up to as high as 3.5.
Okay, so let's go with the other Rams game. Rams at the Saints. What do you think this line is?
Yeah, I think this one would be decidedly higher because the Saints are more of a complete team. So I would probably go with Saints -4.5, maybe get up to 5. And again, just being that they have a better running game, I think, and then they have as many weapons as the Buccaneers, maybe not as big names, but Drew Brees gets the ball out quick. And if they ran into trouble with him under pressure, they could always run some more Taysom Hill packages to keep the Rams off balance. So I think I'd probably settle on 4.5 here.
Okay, I think I'd go a little bit higher. The Packers are -7 against the Rams, so yeah, you have to kind of wonder like how many points does Vegas think there's a difference between the Packers and the Saints? I think probably like 1, maybe. So I would go with the Saints -6. But again, it really depends on how the Rams beat the Packers. If they win super impressively, I think you'll be right about that number. If they win an ugly game, I think it'll be like Saints -6.
Yeah, I think between 4.5 and 6 would be my range on it. 6 would be high end for me. Anytime we get to the championship game, I always have trouble believing that the lines are going to get that high. But if the Rams like win somehow like 13-10 or something, and the Saints like blow out the Bucs, then I could easily see it going 6 or above.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's say the Packers win. It'll be if Tampa pulls the upset, it'll be Tampa Bay at Green Bay. Kind of a rematch of that earlier game. So what do you think this line is?
I would probably put this one at Packers -3. I think you could make a case for slightly lower or slightly higher. You look at what Tampa Bay did to them, and they've really matched up well. But I think that their pass defense has regressed since that point, while Aaron Rodgers has gotten more comfortable and has started playing some of the best football of his career. So I think that -3 is just the right number because the Tom Brady factor might drag the line down below 3, but I think if you get -3 in this game, that would be dead right to me because I think it's probably going to be a field goal game in either direction.
Yeah, I think it could eventually land on 3. I think it might open, as you said, maybe a little bit higher. I think it'd probably open 3.5 or 4 because that's how the Saints open. And in fact, like given that the Saints open -4, maybe it'll open -4.5. But I think the public would bet on Tom Brady as an underdog, kind of like they're doing this week. So I feel like -3.5 is probably where the closing line would be. All right, so Saints at the Packers. If the chalk wins this weekend, what do you think the spread is?
Yeah, I would probably be in the 3 range again. I might give this one actually a 3.5 for the Packers just because the Saints outdoors in Green Bay, there's just nothing appealing about that to me, even to bet them as an underdog. So you'd have to get in the 3.5, 4 range, I think, to at least start. But then again, you talk about like how many points worse does Vegas think the Saints are than the Packers? You'd have to ask that question, but I think it would settle at 3.5 because that would discourage people from just hammering the Packers in a great weather scenario. If it was at 3, I think you'd get a ton of action on the Packers. But I'm curious as to what you'd think about that.
I think you're right about that. And I guess it really depends on how Vegas views the game. Like if they want a lot of money on the Packers, then I think they'd put this line at -3. So I think -3.5 makes a lot of sense to me. It'll be one of those two. It's not going to be much lower. It's not going to be much higher. So I think definitely one of those two. So let's go to the AFC. If both underdogs win this week, it's going to be Browns at the Ravens. Again, a third matchup between these teams. So what do you think this line is?
This one I have trouble with. I would think that the Ravens would be favored again because they match up fairly well with the Browns. I mean, they crushed them in the first meeting, and then they scored nearly 50 points, if not more than 50 points against them on Monday night. So I would probably go Ravens. I would think Ravens -4 might be right in this scenario. Again, it depends a lot on how each team wins. But I mean, if Cleveland beats the Chiefs, people might be like, "Oh, Cleveland's the next team." But at the same time, Baltimore was the number 1 seed last year, so I think -4 would be at least where I'd land in my head at first.
Yeah, so Baltimore was favored in Cleveland on that Monday night game. Baltimore was -1 at Cleveland, so they would definitely be favored. And I think it would be closer to 6, really, because I mean the Chiefs line is 10, and yeah, I do agree. Like if the Browns pull the upset, especially if it's it's a good upset, like convincing upset, then I think that people will be more eager to bet the Browns. But then again, if the Ravens upset the Bills, then there's going to be a lot of hype with them as well, with Lamar Jackson. And given that the Ravens beat them twice already, I think this line is going to be like -6, maybe even a little bit higher, like maybe -6.5.
Yeah, I could definitely see it getting that high. I just hate when lines are like above 6 in a championship game because it always feels like easy money on the underdog to me, but then I'm never right about it.
Yeah, so I guess I'll look at those stats when we do this next one. So Browns at the Bills. What do you say this line is?
Yeah, I think this one you'd be talking about getting closer to 7 because the Bills are just a much better balanced team than the Browns. Like I know they don't match up particularly well with the Browns' run game, but I feel like they have enough weapons to get pressure on Baker Mayfield and contain some of his weapons. Like if you take away Jarvis Landry with Tre'Davious White and make Donovan Peoples-Jones and Austin Hooper and Rashard Higgins have to beat you, I think that you're in pretty good shape, especially if you can throw a lot on the Bills defense. So I think Bills -7 in this scenario would be good.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I'd make it -7. It seems like a good number for that. So I just looked it up. So underdogs is 6 or more in the championship games since 2002. There have been 15 of them. What do you think the spread record is of those teams?
My brain wants to say 10-5, but it's probably wrong.
They're 6 and 9 against the spread.
Yep.
So yeah, the favorites tend to cover. And for fun, what do you think the straight up record is for underdogs of 6 or more?
Okay, underdogs is 6 or more. That would probably. I mean, I'm gonna guess it's gonna be like 3-12.
You're close. It's 2 and 13. So the 2 winners were the Giants in 2007, going into Lambeau and beating Brett Favre. That was the Giants team that upset the Patriots.
Oh yeah, yep. We remember that fondly here.
Yeah, I figured. And then in 2012, the Ravens I went into New England. So another game you might remember fondly. That was I think it was Aqib Talib who got hurt in the first quarter. And then it just seemed like the Patriots defense couldn't recover from that because Bill Belichick's his whole scheme broke down without Talib.
Yeah, both of those games were very painful. I remember. So yeah, no, I guess it's not surprising if a team's a huge favorite over someone else in a championship game, then they're probably clearly the better squad. I'm just in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, they can't be separated by that many points, but I guess they can be.
Yeah, it is funny how it worked out that way. All right, Ravens at the Chiefs, a rematch of the Monday night game. Although that game was in Baltimore, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think this one would probably be Chiefs -6, -6.5, depending again which side they want to get money on. Because I think you could make a good case that the Ravens are about a little bit more than 3 points better than the Browns, given what we've seen them do against them this year. And I think that the books would still want the Chiefs to be pretty heavily favored in this one, but obviously not approaching double digits. So I think if you're giving away the key number of 7 and possibly the opportunity to bet on a 6, I think that would attract people to bet the Chiefs. So I'll say -6.5 though. I think that would be where I'd go.
Do you remember what that week 3 line was? Chiefs at Ravens.
I don't. I remember that I got it right.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't remember the line.
It was Ravens -3.5 against the
Oh,
Chiefs.
that's right.
What a bad number that was. At the time, it's not that obvious. Like we both had them. I don't know. I think we both had them in the Super Contest, maybe, but it was that was mispriced to say the least. I think this line would be a little lower than you said because there's so much Lamar Jackson hype. I think people would want to bet on him. So I would say like Chiefs -4.5, -5, something like that. I just think that Baltimore has so much hype attached to it. Like Baltimore is favored by more than a field goal in Tennessee, and like I know Baltimore covered the spread. I stand by that number being bad. Like those two teams are close. I don't think this should have been a road favorite of more than a field goal.
Yeah, no, that number was bad. I think you're right. People love betting on like Lamar Jackson because he's still technically the reigning MVP, and just the way he wins games with scrambling is just very appealing to people, and it's very hard for defenses to plan against. So I could definitely see them making it something in the -5 range. I just think that they wouldn't want to give the Chiefs too easy of a path to victory unless they're really trying to get people to bet on the Chiefs.
Yeah, well, who knows? Maybe they would want to. All right, the final game, if the chalk prevails, Bills at the Chiefs. What is this line?
Yeah, I want to say this one will be another one that's -3 or -3.5 in favor of the Chiefs. I think that if you get up to 3.5, you'd probably want people to bet on the Bills keeping it close. I think the Bills are a very, very good team. We've talked about their weaknesses at length today. But I think that the Chiefs are just kind of a better version of the Bills at this point in time. Like, I think with one more year and a couple more upgrades for Buffalo, you might be talking about Josh Allen challenging Patrick Mahomes for the AFC crown, but I still think that the Chiefs hold a slight advantage in that area. So if they're at home and a 3.5-point favorite, I think that would make some sense to me.
So I initially agreed with you, and then I looked at the week 6 line when the Chiefs played at Buffalo. Do you remember what that line was?
No, I don't remember that. I'm assuming Kansas City was favored in that one, though.
They're favored by 3.5 in Buffalo.
Okay.
So I like I said, I initially agree with you, and then I'm like, okay, so I think they're going to overvalue the Chiefs. So I think this might be Chiefs -4.5 as well. And if you look at the Bills Ravens game, the line's -2, which is I think you give a home team -2 at 2 points now. If they consider those two teams even, then if the Chiefs are -4.5 over Baltimore, then I think that you'd have to give the same number to the Buffalo game.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I could definitely see that. Yeah, I can't believe that the Chiefs were favored by that much in Buffalo. That just goes to show you how much Buffalo's improved as the season's gone along.
Yeah, and to be fair, Buffalo had a ton of injuries in that game. They were missing. I remember actually, I might have it written down who they were missing in that game. They're missing Matt Milano, Tre'Davious White, and Levi Wallace. So they were down a lot of players in their back seven. So they would be a lot better against Kansas City this time, and I hope that's going to be the game because I think we've seen Ravens Chiefs too many times to know how that's going to happen. Like it seems like the Chiefs match up so well against the Ravens. I would love to see the Chiefs versus the Bills where Buffalo's at full strength.
Yeah, I'd like to see either that or just the Browns take on the Bills because that would be the ultimate, like, two fan bases that have waited a really long time for their teams to be competitive have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. So I think either way, you're rooting for the Bills to beat the Ravens, and then whatever happens in Chiefs-Browns, it should create at least a good storyline.
That's true. It's fair enough. All right, that's about it. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. Also at Rigos Rag on Twitter. That's where we keep all our Washington football content. We'll be having GM search updates this week and some free agent previews. So yeah, if you want to check that stuff up, feel free and follow me and just tweet at me with any questions you have, and I'll tweet my picks throughout the week. And hopefully we'll keep this going. But as long as I have a winning record each week, I'm not allowed to shave. So if I do have a losing week, I will be somewhat relieved because I'm getting tired of this, but I cannot cut it because of superstitious reasons. I don't know if any of you care about that, but there you go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I felt that way. I don't know, like someone mentioned my haircut earlier. I felt the same way about the super contest. Like I was like, I don't want to cut my hair. I don't want to do anything like weird. I follow the same routine every night. I just wanted to finish in the top 10 of the super contest. So it worked out. And now because the season's over, I got my haircut, and I know I probably screwed myself for 2021, but what are you going to do? I had to get a haircut at some point. All right, I'm at walterfootball.com. We're going to have as I said before, we're going to have a 2021 NFL mock draft update on Wednesday morning. And like I said, a new player at number 3 overall. Not going to be Penei Sewell. It's going to be someone from the Alabama Ohio State game last night, and you can probably guess who that is. We're going to have updated picks throughout the week, Thursday thoughts, Saturday notes, and then the final thoughts right before, like a half hour-ish before each game. And plus, Charlie Campbell is posting a ton of content as usual, so definitely check that out. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right, bye.